Shifting Gears is a new situation comedy with Tim Allen and Kat Dennings. And I hated this first episode. This is gonna be one of those 10-minute rants where, yeah, I'm gonna tear this one a new one. But I am gonna say this. I'm not really certain if this show is trying to be purposely retro. I actually thought about this after I had finished the episode, because my initial reaction to this thing was like, wow, that is utter... I can't believe they actually made this now. And maybe that was the point. Now, if you know anything about Tim Allen, you remember that, or if you remember the 90s, Tim Allen was all over the place in the 90s. His show Home Improvement was easily a runaway hit from its very first episode. And it was one of those things that really established Tim Allen as kind of a new force of comedy. He was sort of kind of what Bill Cosby was in the 80s, Tim Allen was in the 90s. Essentially this funny guy that had a family and knew his family wasn't the most important thing in his life. That kind of thing. Home Improvement was set up like that. Now back in the 90s, you could make a sitcom that was very formulaic, in which like the same things would happen each week, but just in a different variation. You could do that and you can get away with that. Ever since we've gotten to the age of streaming, I feel like situation comedies have gone the way of the dodo. The last one, I don't know, I hesitate to say great one, but the model of, say, something like The Big Bang Theory, for example, is pretty much gone. If you're going to do a situation comedy, I can't even really think of any situation comedies now these days. That is the type that are a traditional one set with a laugh track. They usually don't have those anymore. Generally, when you do a comedy show, I mean, there are some that are kept under half an hour, but they're usually done in multi-camera and usually done in a bigger budget, and that studio audience, thing of the past. Get rid of that thing. Specifically, we don't need a laugh track. We don't need people telling us when to laugh. So here's the thing. Tim Allen was super big in the 90s, and then of course he had to, Home Improvement lasted as long as it could, and it lasted a lot longer than it should. I actually remember, like, at the time my wife and I were engaged, and I remember coming over to her place and Home Improvement was on. The first thing I said was like, is this show still on? And I just couldn't believe it. And because it lasted like, I think, I don't know, 8 or 9 seasons or something like that. And then I think Tim Allen, was having a really good career in movies after starring the Santa Claus and, of course, playing Buzz Lightyear. He always had that one to fall back on. And not to mention all the Santa Claus movies they made, which were a lot. And they even had a series on that. And that, I'm assuming, was a situation comedy that didn't really have a laugh track. I haven't watched it. In between that time, he did that show Last Man Standing, which was basically just Home Improvement, but instead of having sons, he had daughters. I feel like that was the show's pitch. Now, a lot of people sort of like the show, and by a lot of people, I mean a lot of right-wing people really like this show, because Tim Allen has a lot of right-wing values. I don't know if he's one of those full-on Trump supporter guys like Roseanne Barr is, but he could be. He could easily embrace that, and I really get the feeling that the Republican Party really wanted him to embrace that, but I don't really see that image of him there. But Shifting Gears is, I feel like, I was looking at this show and I was going like, who ordered this? And then I was also thinking like, who even wants this? But, I get it. Tim Allen is a very funny man, and I like seeing movies with him in them. But I like seeing movies with him in them like over a decade ago. I feel like, okay, I feel like at this point in time, you should really just kind of quietly retire, and I feel like maybe that's what Shifting Gears is kind of about, where essentially the premise is Tim Allen plays a guy who's run the same, auto shop for like who knows how long, probably his entire life, at least since he's been married. And one day his daughter finally comes home. And yeah, he has a very estranged relationship with his daughter. His daughter married a musician, and they've just got a divorce. So she comes home with her 2 kids, and essentially they sort of have to reconcile. And she's got to essentially get a job, get her life together because of what has happened to her. This is a setup that has been in a lot of movies and TV shows, so nothing new. Now, here's the deal. This show not only has a laugh track, but it actually has like applause, which I haven't seen in like anything since I don't even remember. I found it really odd that when Tim Allen first enters the scene, there's lots of applause for him, and I kind of went like, that was unexpected. And then ditto happened when Kat Dennings appeared on the scene, and it really slowed the scene down too. And hey, if you've done enough, if you've watched enough shows that have a studio audience, you know how much that the actors actually have to pause and do things that you don't normally do in a conversation just to keep the scene going. And I felt like it's really an interruption, and I really did not think that this is a show that, honestly, I didn't laugh once in this show. I will say that, because everything about this show I could see coming from a mile away. And unfortunately, every one of Tim Allen's lines is filled with like, oh, kids these days with their I felt like every line of his is just basically like, oh, we did it so much better in my time. Just such curmudgeon-y bull crap. I just went like, I can't really stand that. And everything that Kat Dennings says is just, I don't know. I want to say the word millennial, but I'm not sure whether I have the generation right here. And I just kind of felt like, yeah, and I think there's like one scene where Tim Allen just tears down Uber, and because the kid doesn't know how to really drive, and then he takes the kid out to drive, and the kid hits the car, or the kid accidentally dents the car or something like that. Nothing serious, and that's about as close as there is to essentially a conflict on this episode. Besides the initial conflict of this guy's daughter coming back after all these years. Apparently they haven't talked after a while. Tim Allen apparently has a wife, but this wife has passed away. I have no idea if, I honestly would have liked if there was like Tim Allen had a wife in this kind of thing like that, but I actually kind of like the idea that he's a widower kind of thing. He's living pretty much alone in a big house that's empty and stuff like that. I kind of like that aspect. Other things I kind of liked is it brought in stars I hadn't seen in their prime since the 90s. Sean William Scott, most famous for playing Stifler from the American Pie series, shows up in this thing as one of his fellow mechanics. And also Daryl Mitchell. Daryl Mitchell is an actor who is unfortunately in a wheelchair after a certain accident he was in. Before that, he was pretty much, he was getting a lot of good roles. In fact, he was in a movie called Galaxy Quest, where he played a character, Laredo. And honestly, that's when I think Daryl Mitchell, I think that movie, because I think that was his best performance. I mean, he was just hysterical in that movie. And so he's playing a kind of a wheelchair-bound kind of guy who works at the shop. They didn't really focus much on those characters, so I really couldn't tell what direction they were going with them. I can't tell if Kat Dennings is going to have a relationship with one of them, which is kind of maybe where the show is going to, but honestly, I don't really care about this show. And this is one of those shows that, if it really is following the traditional situational comedy plot, they don't really try, situation comedies don't shake themselves up too much. They have episodes where something does happen that changes it from then on, but for the most part, Tim Allen's probably always going to own this auto shop here from the first episode to the last episode. We know that. Anyway, so I will have to admit, to me, I just kind of go like, this show exists because Tim Allen was once popular, is why this show exists. And I think Tim Allen will always have this following, specifically from the right-wing agenda. So I really get the feeling like this is more of a thing where they just ran the demographics and they figured out, well, this might be interesting. People will probably watch this. And yeah, I did look, and if you look at some of the shows that are of the week on the Disney Plus Hulu thing, yeah, this show shows up on it. I have no idea if it's on ABC or whatever. It feels like an ABC show. I mean, if it showed up on Disney Plus, it's probably an ABC show. Well, then again, they do have The Simpsons on there, so I don't know how this works now, because who knows. This feels like a show that is probably going to get a lot of jeers, and I don't really want to add to it. But I'm not going to recommend watching it. I don't know. I'm just not. So anyway, I'm going to end this review a few seconds early. This is Mark Rollins from the Geek Church, signing off.